I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I've kind of been going through it recently. The last couple months just haven't been super kind on my mental well-being overall, and that certainly has at least partially stemmed from the fact that my country was and, is continuing its spiral into full-on military occupation, authoritarianism, and, actively murdering and kidnapping innocent civilians in broad daylight. And in the past few weeks, they've been revealing new worldview-shattering, or worldview-affirming, if you believe what I believe, stories and images that reveal some of the most disturbing truths about the ruling class of my country and the world, and still knowing that, around half of my fellow Americans will just rush to defend their actions, no matter how blatantly unjust or outright fucking evil they are, or they'll pin the blame on some minority group instead of the billionaires that are not only destroying the earth, but also, trafficking children and eating fucking babies? But that hasn't been the source of all of my negative feelings recently. Feeling shitty about what's going on right now is normal. I would be concerned if I or anyone else didn't feel shitty about the things that are being revealed. But these past couple months, for me personally, it's just been more than that. Even when I was at my happiest and most fulfilled, I still felt this sort of seething rage towards the bourgeoisie that have stolen our future. That's just my base level, No, it's been something else more personal these past few months, or at least different. But I'll take any opportunity I can to shit on billionaires. That's why I opened the video this way, even though it's relatively unrelated. I just would feel insane not to address it, because it's been a huge thing that I've been thinking about constantly and has been making me anxious and afraid for the future. And I don't imagine that I am alone in that regard. Anyways, I digress. I recently came to the realization of just how bent out of shape I was getting over small, ultimately unimportant shit. The way I felt was affecting the way I was approaching everything, every aspect of my life. Everything that I needed to do on a daily or weekly or even like a fucking monthly basis just started to feel so daunting, and the real problem looming over me was just that I wasn't confronting the fact that I felt like shit at a base level. I was just pushing those feelings further down the line for future me to deal with, and just trying to lock in on what needed to be done, trying to be as quote-unquote productive as possible and not allowing myself to feel those things. And until I confronted those feelings, they were just going to poison my well of emotion and make it impossible, or at least feel impossible, for me to get anything done. Everything felt like a waking nightmare. Because awful feelings demand to be felt eventually, just like any other feelings, and it got to the point where they were seeping out of my mind and into everything I was doing, like fucking Calamity Ganon. Things I loved began to feel like obligations or chores, and then my actual obligations and chores felt even worse than usual, and I was over catastrophizing every single setback I faced, which ultimately just kind of guaranteed my failure. I was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every inconvenience felt world-ending. I was becoming less grateful for the things that I do have and more bitter at, what was going on. Another brief digression about the state of the world generally, because I feel like it needs to be stated again as clearly as possible that the state of the world, and especially the United States, like right now, and the information we are being given, is definitely something that is worthy of being upset about. My point isn't that I shouldn't have been upset. Those were the only feelings I was using to interface with the entirety of reality, and that's just made me feel even worse about shit that I didn't need to feel bad about, because there are things worth feeling bad about. My mom passed away almost 6 years ago now, and I still feel like shit about that, and if I ever stop feeling like shit about it, I'm gonna know that something is wrong. My point ultimately is that being upset at as Jaden Smith would say, the socioeconomic and political state of the world, that's normal, but taking that upsetness into everything you do is unhealthy. Only being upset all the time is not the way to positively impact the world or your own life. So yeah, I just wanted to make that very clear before moving on. I'm not sure exactly when I noticed how bad the issue was for me, but I did, and I've been trying to make a more conscious effort recently to get out of that headspace. And so that's what I want to talk about in this Game Yap, in hopes that even one person who sees this is positively impacted by what I have to say, and, the things I've done to try and help myself feel better when I feel the worst, or at the very least to keep pushing through it. As Genesis Owusu says on the song Stay Blessed, when you're going through hell, you just keep going. And that can be very daunting at times when you feel like shit, so these are some things that I've been trying to do when I feel like shit to make myself feel less like shit, or at the very least push through the shitty feeling to still have a productive or positive day overall. So first, and perhaps most importantly, just taking time to sit and let myself feel awful, to like cry really fucking hard about the awful feelings I was feeling, because that's what humans do when they feel like devastation and anguish, is we cry. You know, trying not to is not going to make that need go away. It's just gonna hurt more. It's like trying to stifle a cough after you take a fat fucking bong rip. You're just gonna hurt yourself more by holding it in. I've also been trying to make an effort to actively build the skill of seeing the silver lining, really just being able to frame things positively, or at the very least not catastrophically, has been incredibly helpful. You know, some of those setbacks I was facing were so insignificant and pointless for me to register that I'm almost embarrassed, like retroactively thinking on how I crashed out over minor inconveniences, you know?
I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds!
But even when things actually were, you know, setbacks that I was facing, and it wasn't just me over catastrophizing things, being able to adapt and be flexible around setbacks is the best way to overcome them. And I talked about that in more detail in a previous Game Yap, so go check that one out. And also all of the other ones, please, all of them. I have a playlist for your convenience. Please watch them, and then also like and subscribe. And lastly, I've just kind of been trying to take the time to allow myself to sit in silence, or, you know, maybe with some white noise or music for my ADHD, but just taking time to allow my body and my mind to communicate with each other, to sort of figure out what I need in that moment, what I should be doing, instead of constantly trying to be doing something and being productive at all times and hustle and grind and, ooh, yeah, gotta get ahead, you know? Oh, Jesus. I'm not the best at doing this yet, but I'm still doing it anyways and practicing and getting better at it. Oftentimes, it can stop me from beginning the first step down what would usually be like a catastrophic downward spiral. And I don't know if anyone needs to hear this, but I certainly did. You're probably not gonna find the cure to all your issues from someone on the internet trying to sell you something, or, you know, a book or anything. Self-help can absolutely be helpful, and those resources and books and stuff can absolutely help with, you know, changing your frame of mind or your approach to things. I'm not saying that reading is bad. Please don't get it fucking twisted. But ultimately, you have to look to yourself for what to do and how to respond to events. So those are the things I've been doing, and I'm, you know, just reminding myself to do them has made me much better at bouncing back when I, you know, face a setback or start to spiral out of control mentally. And part of that is just because every day I wake up to a new dystopian headline that I'm, you know, subject to. But I'd rather, you know that it's happening and be upset that it's happening than, you know, stick my head in the sand and remain ignorant about it. And I feel like that's a mindset everybody should adopt. If you're not into politics, you should probably reevaluate that. But by reminding myself to do these things, I've been, you know, feeling joy in the things I was doing again, even if they were just obligations or chores, instead of just feeling like I was checking one of 10,000 boxes. Because, like, and I hate to say this, you know, life really is just kind of an endless series of tasks. And that's daunting, you know, but as daunting as it may be, it's also exciting, because it means there's always going to be more to do. There's always going to be new opportunities ahead of you, more joy to find, more experience to gain. While life is kind of a series of endless tasks, those tasks are more opportunities than they are obligations. But I couldn't really see that past my frustrations, and that's just the mindset I'm trying to embrace, because even when my base feeling is bad, I can acknowledge that my circumstances personally are hardly awful in the grand scheme of things. So while it's okay to feel that way, letting that feeling overtake my whole perspective on reality is an exponentially difficult abyss to pull myself out of. So if you catch yourself, you know, catastrophizing situations, just try to remind yourself of what you're grateful to have and what you can possibly do with the time you have, or to just take some time to rest. You know, resting is very important. You know, when your routines start to feel like a chore, it can get really easy to view every setback as just another one on this massive pile, when really they've all just been a part of the path to where you are now. The only setback that's really final is death. Until then, every defeat is purely psychological, and therefore you can come back from anything if you put your mind to it, and it becomes a lot easier when you embrace that mindset to roll with the punches, so to speak. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope any of the advice I gave here was, you know, useful for you or helpful in some way, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.